Hi, everyone. The mission of the Newsa-Cast is to carry on the tradition and services of the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet that was held in Appleton for 57 years. The banquet has raised over $1 million for youth sports in the area during that time. And as we work up to a live event again, we have developed the Newsa-Cast podcast. Through conversations, we highlight the stories right here from our own backyard. And just like at the Red Smith Banquet, we highlight the youth of our area, the coaches, the schools, and even local influencers that make our community great. If you would like to help us continue our mission, please head over to redsmith.org to donate. On today's Newsa-Cast, we are joined by Neenah Rockets head football coach, Steve Jung. Tosh and I take an old look at new, play a little It's Forgotten and I'm Never Forgetting. And of course, we've got our Red Smith Banquet throwback, Art Holst, which reminds me, folks, go to the Newsa-Cast YouTube page. Check out our throwbacks. As we watch the NCAA tournament, we've got Bill Raftery, we've got Vern Lundquist. They all came to the Red Smith Banquet. Go take a listen to them. And now, let's get this show on the road.
This is a 18-year-old kid thinking, of course, it'd be an easy job. Call my counselor up. I tell him, hey, I'm going to go to Lawrence. I'm not coming. And you can take me off your list. And she's like, whoa, you're one of Coach Mason Holder's big finds. He's going to be upset. You have to call him. And I was like, oh. She's like, nope. Here's his home number. You're going to have to call him. Gosh, did he light me up. And he knew the story. It's that Bob Wardinger. I know it.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast. What is a Newsa-Cast? It's where we bring local folk stories to life through conversation.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to another episode of the Newsa-Cast. We are moving forward. We have a great interview this week. Very excited to talk to a former colleague and now the Neenah football coach, Steve Jung.
Yes, Tosh. Great interview with Coach Jung, Neenah Rockets football head coach. And it's good to talk a little football in the midst of March Madness.
Yeah, it was a great interview. He has a great perspective with his players and, what he expects. You get to hear a lot about that. Talks a little bit about, what we hear from pretty much every coach that comes on, that they want two sport athletes at least. They encourage them to play two sports, not to specialize, which is refreshing as well. Talks a little bit about his kids as well, which is fantastic. You get to hear a great story about his son, who is a future Badger now.
It was incredible, Tosh. That part of it. I mean, you sort of hear that his kid is pretty good at football, but yeah, I mean, he legit might be a starter for the Badgers. So, and in fact, is the leader to be a starter for the Badgers. So that's, I mean, as a dad, my gosh, I don't want to say that's all we're after, but that's kind of all we're after, right, Tosh?
That's pretty impressive. And it's a great story. He just has a really good story moving from Waukesha to Appleton East to Wausau, and then back to his hometown of Neenah. And it's a great story. They're obviously one of the top teams in the FVA every single year, and he's doing an excellent job coaching. And they got the beautiful new facilities. So yeah, probably a pretty nice place to coach. And you get to hear all about it with Steve. He's fantastic. Yeah,
absolutely, Tosh. Not a bad high school gig, that's for sure. You have a pretty nice gig too, Tosh, down in Oshkosh, right? Your first year in the admin side of school down at Oshkosh North, and wow, their basketball team with one heck of a run.
Yeah, they had a nice run. It was a little disappointing. They lost by one in final seconds down at State, but a fantastic season for them. It was a lot of fun to watch. I was super happy just to be part of it and to support the boys and coaches. It was awesome, and an added bonus is I got to stand on the floor of the Kohl Center, stood right on the W. That was kind of cool. So I don't think that'll ever happen again. But
Did you take a picture?
Yeah,
Do you
very
have a
neat.
picture or anything?
I do have a picture standing
Yeah.
there. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So
That is cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, right. It hardly ever happens, but you sit in those big arenas or football stadiums and you go to the middle of the field, and they always feel a little bit smaller than what you kind of envision. I think,
Yeah,
right? Everything,
absolutely.
like, they're right on top of you. It's a really weird feeling, but man, what a great experience for you, for the kids. I mean, anytime you go down to Madison, and compete for a state title, or on the girls' side, Green Bay, and compete for state titles, that's as good as it gets in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, shout out to those boys, and they did a great job this year, and nothing to be ashamed of. They, just making it to state is incredible. I know I wish it could have gone a little further, but they had a great season, and super proud of the boys at Oshkosh North for sure.
Pretty cool too. Tosh, Indiana Pacer, Tyrese Halliburton, right? Yeah. Repping his old school, had the 2025 state-bound Oshkosh North T-shirt on. It was cool as can be in his warm-ups out on the Pacer floor.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. That as soon as that hit social media, that was flying around the school. I think we reposted it on a Facebook page for Oshkosh North, so that was pretty awesome. He still does a lot for Oshkosh. Still calls it home. He supports the school, supports the boys. I mean, there was a lot of social media stuff that he was putting out there, supporting the boys in their run through the state playoffs. So, big shout out to him. I mean, that's awesome that he takes the time to do that, and very cool that he had the state-bound shirt on.
No, that is awesome. It's so cool. I mean, to have an NBA or a professional athlete right from our own backyard, that really doesn't happen too often. Certainly in Wisconsin, that hardly ever happens.
Yeah, that's true. And, Tyrese went to Iowa State, and Zay's going to be following. That's another person. Got to shout out Zay. He was named Mr. Basketball for Wisconsin. Yeah. So he's following in Tyrese's footsteps, going out to Iowa State to continue playing. And he had a fantastic season. He's the third leading scorer in Wisconsin State history. And he had over 1,000 points this year, which is absolutely incredible.
It's unbelievable. And I won't be surprised. And someday he's out warming up on some NBA floor with a 2030 Oshkosh North state-bound white T-shirt on.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. So, big shout out to him, Mr. Basketball for the state of Wisconsin for 2024-25. So, very, very cool.
Yeah, Tosh, if we keep the basketball theme going, Bill Rafferty, I wanted to give a shout out. You and I talked about him just briefly last week in the Throwback, and we had him on the Throwback. Legit, just laugh out loud funny, unbelievable, an absolute epic story of Al McGuire parking his car at Marquette. I mean, for anybody that knows the streets of Milwaukee, and especially around Marquette's campus, there is no parking. And McGuire figured out a way to park, and only the way that Al McGuire can. And Rafferty retells that story, and God dang, is that funny.
Yeah, he did a great job. I mean, obviously he's a professional, but you never know what you're going to get when some of these speakers come. But he was polished. He was funny. He had the crowd laughing and engaged. It was awesome. So if you didn't check it out, go back and check out that Throwback on our YouTube channel. It is fantastic.
Definitely. And our socials too. We're on every social platform. So check us out there. We do. Lindsay does great stuff. Taylor cutting all that stuff up and finding the funny things that these folks say at the Red Smith Banquet through the years. Yeah, Tosh, I was watching we're watching a lot of NCAA basketball, and we had the state basketball on recently, but I was I guess it just speaks to the times we live in, but it literally stopped me in my tracks. And I watched, it's been on a couple of times, but it's an infomercial or a commercial from the NCAA saying, draw the line. It's a draw the line campaign on online bullying by gamblers that lose, that go and attack these players for losing a bet. Obviously online betting is prevalent now. It's not legal in Wisconsin, but shoot, you can still bet on players, from a fantasy angle. So you can literally bet on these players and games in just about anywhere in the world. And when a bet doesn't go so well, I guess I know it makes sense, but I never really thought about it. Social media, they just absolutely attack these kids, and that's really not fair. And
Sure.
so much so that they have to have a draw the line campaign. Kind of sad.
Yeah, that is absolutely. But unfortunately, that is everybody advertises it. DraftKings, ESPN, Barstool Sports. I mean, they all have their own betting now, so
Right.
it's really, really easy. So yeah, that is definitely an unfortunate side.
Yeah, I mean, well, Big Cat always says it, but I mean, right? One, they're just kids, and even if they're not, it's gambling. It's
Right.
you don't even have a 50-50 shot to win, but
Well, it's very easy to hide behind the keyboard
yeah,
and type some stuff. It's not so easy when you have to do it face to face,
that's right.
So
That's right.
knock it off.
Yeah, knock it off. It's not easy putting this face out there, right, Tosh?
Yeah. Face for radio.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
anything else new, Joe? Anything exciting coming up?
Well, Tosh, I mean, the weather's turning nicer. Baseball started. It's nice to see and hear some games on the air. I know.
I believe it's opening week this week.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. In fact, they even opened the Dodgers out in Japan.
Yep.
That's always so weird, right? The season, there's actually been major league games played already.
Right.
But yeah, now baseball's back in the air. We've got, I don't know, Tosh, this weather is not very baseball-like. They're going to have trouble getting games started here. I know high school must start in about a week or so, right?
High school starts, I believe, in a
Yeah.
week. Yeah, I think the first week of April will be the first games of the season, along with a lot of other sports. I know softball, lacrosse will be kicking off. I think Appleton United kicks off on the 4th against, I think it's the 4th. Yeah, I think the 4th, whatever that is, Tuesday, against Notre Dame Academy. The varsity's traveling up there for a game against them for their opening game, which is fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And all the sports are getting going. So super excited about that.
Yeah, we're in that transition period. It's nice though, because you can sit back and watch, March Madness. I mean, that's the main thing going right now. And Masters is coming up. Excited for that.
Absolutely.
It's coming quick. And well, PGA golf's actually kind of fun to watch. They're getting themselves ready for the Masters. So the golf is starting to ramp up.
The Masters is something else. It's been an event that I would always like to go to. If I get lucky enough to get tickets to it. But I've heard so many people have gone and they said the course is amazing. It's going to look a little different this year because of the storm damage that they had. So it'll be interesting to see what changes have been made when the hurricane came through last year. But it's still an amazing event. Masters Week is always fun, and it's always great to check out all the action.
No doubt. Anything new with you, Tosh? And I know you mentioned Ethan's. He's knee deep in lacrosse now. That's all getting going.
Yeah, nothing really new. Melissa, Ethan, and I went out to dinner on Saturday to Mill City, which is fantastic. It's a kind of in that old. I think it was it a Kiwanis?
The old Elks Club.
Elks Club. That's what it was.
Danny O.
Yeah, that place has the most amazing food. It was fantastic. So if you get a chance, you should check out Mill City and have yourself a burger. They have just an excellent menu, great food, and a fun atmosphere.
Yeah,
so
it's a cool location,
it out.
right? Almost in a neighborhood, and it's you park. There's never any parking there. Sometimes I get the late mail route on that route once in a while, and it's like, holy cow, you cannot walk around here. There's so many cars, and it smells incredible. They always have the smoker out back. It's so good, Tosh. Good call.
Yeah, check that place out. It was fantastic. So check it out if you get a chance. But yeah, not much. It was going down to Madison this weekend and ACT testing at the high school past week. So that's over with. And, now it's just time to get ready for spring and start looking ahead to all the other things like graduation and prom and all those other things that happen with high school.
Yeah,
So
warmth and sun. I'm looking for that.
yeah, hopefully we get some soon. I don't want to sit out in 30-degree weather watching baseball, softball, soccer, and lacrosse.
Yeah.
So
I miss those days, but I don't miss the weather of those days.
absolutely. So yeah, I guess we can get ahead. We got that fantastic interview with Steve Jung coming up, and we got our amazing segments like always. So what do you say, Joe? Should we get this
Let's
thing going?
do it, Tosh. We'll get the show on the road, as we like to say. It's that time again, once again, for an old look at new. Brought to you by Raleigh Winter and Associates, celebrating 55 years. Did you know that in 1962, an Appleton junior high school teacher with a strong work ethic started a residential realty company? His name, Raleigh Winter. 3 generations later, the Winters still hold true to a strong work ethic and an excellent reputation in the community. Today, Raleigh Winter and Associates remain actively involved in providing retail, office, and industrial users an affordable, well-designed working environment through the creation and/or acquisition of quality real estate in the Fox cities and even beyond new. So what do you say? Let's take an old look at new.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, it is time for our look at history or anything else that catches our eye, and it is the old look at new. Joe, what do you got for us this week?
Well, Tosh, I don't even know where I found this, but my love of food certainly brought me back to this time. And one of the great long-lost restaurants of Appleton, Wisconsin, is no longer with us, and it's been a long time. Most folks probably don't remember it, but it's a place called the Hobnobbin, and it was located. Do you remember where that was? Remember that place? The Gadbows. Tosh and I remember this. Really great golfer, Lori Gadbow. Her parents owned it. But this place was in Valley Fair, not even there anymore, but the sign is there. Kind of across the street from there, there's a fire department there. Right across from there, I don't even know if that looks like a house. But that was an absolutely beautiful kind of house, restaurant-y, homey kind of place, tucked in with trees and all that. But it was a fantastic restaurant that had, I remember going there for Sunday brunch. You could certainly go there for fish fries. I mean, it was basically a supper club, maybe George's-esque type supper club. But just a fantastic place. I know with Easter coming up, I think that was actually one of our spots for Easter brunch. I have fond memories of going to the Hobnobbin, and I miss. There aren't many places like that anymore. We have lots of supper clubs. But this place was just slightly different than that. Maybe just a little more homier than a supper club, if that's possible.
Yeah, that was a good place. I remember going there. It was fantastic. So
I always get a kick out of looking at this. So this was a place, I don't even know when they closed, but they were prominent in the 70s and 80s is basically when that was their heyday. But I always get a kick out of looking at the menu. I mean, dinners and lunches. I mean, the most you're going to spend is $16, and that's probably, the left side of a cow. $5.50, $4.50. Yeah, it's just things change for sure, but prices definitely change, Tosh.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I'm done reminiscing about the Hobnobbin. Tosh, what are you going to take a look at this week?
Well, we're going to go all the way back to 1874.
Dang.
And in 1874, there was a gentleman born in Budapest. And we probably know him after he came to Appleton back in April. He was born in April 6th, 1874, but he came to, that's what he claimed. He was actually born on March 24th of 1874, and he's better known to us here in Appleton as Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
And then he left Appleton at about the age of 9, moved out to New York, and that's where his escape artist and magician career kind of took off out in New York. So,
damn it, Tosh, we claim them here in Appleton. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. We have all kinds of Harry Houdini in Appleton, the magic of Harry downtown Appleton,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. I remember reading his biography, and I always felt bad. One of his tricks was he would be able to take a punch from anybody, and
Yeah.
I don't know what he did, but he wasn't prepared by his last victim, the last guy. He was a boxer, and
Right.
I don't know what he is, broke his spleen or something. I don't know. But he got
something. Yeah, it was that's what ended up killing him. That's right. Yeah. But yeah, we take a fond liking to Harry Houdini here in Appleton, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
No, we claim him as our own, Tosh, no doubt about it. But yeah, no, he was incredible. First real magician that David Blaine type stuff. Underwater, handcuffed. Oh, I can't breathe just talking about it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see that. If you get a chance, the museum at the castle downtown Appleton has a nice Harry Houdini exhibit. I think they pretty much always have
they
that.
might. That's a cool place too. That's a hidden gem in this area too. We should go visit them sometime, but they have a lot of cool rotating exhibits. They had several years ago, they had a cool football one. They actually even had a Red Smith Banquet one a long time ago.
Never forget Harry Houdini, but what else did we never forget, Joe?
Gosh, we might forget where we're at, but we're not going to forget that Raleigh Winter is our sponsor of An Old Look at New. So we thank those guys, and we thank you for listening to this rendition of An Old Look at New.
Well, Steve, thanks for coming on. I mean, I've known you for, it's been quite a while. You started teaching at East, and we got to hang out in the teacher's lounge quite a bit, and it's been a pleasure knowing you. And we've kind of lost touch a little bit after you left East and went to Wausau, but you're back in Neenah now for a while, and I thought it would be absolutely incredible just to hear your story, being a Neenah boy and growing up and going to Lawrence and all of that stuff. And we thought you'd be excellent for this podcast. So how amazing is it being at the new school and having just this incredible football field in place for these young athletes?
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a conversation with one of my kids that's going to go to Lakeland, and one of our offensive linemen. And he said, Coach, I just went over to Lakeland. I had a great visit. He said, but our weight room's 3 times bigger than them, 10 times nicer, and our football field's 50 times nicer. Yeah. I said, the only way you're probably going to get better than us is to go Division I. Or there's a few Division II schools out there that are nicer as well. But I mean, you're not going to see too many nicer football fields, and you're not going to see too many nicer weight rooms than what we have here at Neenah High School. I just feel blessed.
You're an 86 grad, right, of Neenah High School, which at that time, I mean, Tosh and I are 88 grads at Appleton West. So, I mean, we kind of grew up in the same era and kind of understand how the high schools worked. And Neenah at that time was kind of how we feel about your current high school now, but that's a pretty good, certainly in 86, that's a pretty darn cool high school. That big old field house, the theater is awesome. I mean, that had to actually feel pretty good as a student back then to go to Neenah High School.
Well, I'll tell you what, they have, I mean, there aren't too many nicer middle schools than you'll ever see.
Yeah.
As far as working kid, every day after school, Monday through Thursday, I go over there to their weight room, which is 6,000 square feet of a weight room in a middle school, and use the field house to run our kids in. So I still make use of that field that space, and we're blessed to work out the 6th, 7th, 8th grade boys and girls over there after school. And so it's really nice. But, getting back to your original point, back when we were first in the 80s, that was a pretty nice place. I mean, it's all space. And then, I leave and I come back, and then it's got a link, and it's it's even bigger.
Hey, did you ever think back in 1986, you're roaming the halls thinking I'm coming back someday as the head football coach of this place?
I don't think that ever crossed my mind.
Yeah, I believe it. Did you play high school football at Neenah?
Yep, I played high school football, and I ran track at Neenah.
What kind of offense did you run back then? Was it just a lot of run?
Yeah, it was a lot of run. I was a two-way player. I played outside linebacker and wide receiver, and we ran a lot of blast and belly and and passes.
The old FBA.
The old FBA.
Yeah.
Kind of still a little bit about what we are. A lot of running, a lot of play action pass.
Well, a lot of the schools are like that. I would say North is a lot like, Appleton West obviously was back in the day, and maybe Kimberly not so much. But Tosh and I were talking about this, and my memory might be wrong, but not every high school had lights back then. So didn't some of the high school, like the Friday night games, start at like 4:00 or something in the afternoon?
The teams that didn't have lights, we generally played our games at like 10:00 in the morning or at noon. Like Appleton West, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I thought we played it like Einstein or something.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm almost positive you did. Yeah.
And that was always on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't that amazing? Now you see a Friday night, the Friday night lights, a huge scoreboards. I mean, God, some of these lights in these stadiums, they blink, and it's the production that goes into a Friday night game, and the offenses are more dynamic. I mean, what an evolution.
Oh yeah, no. Now lights are standard, right? And now it's these guys don't have a turf field. That's odd, so the changes. It'd be interesting what happens in the next 30 years.
No doubt. I tell you, the LED lights are game changing too. It's a lot more clear with those lights.
Oh, no question. When you go to a field that's a little bit older, and you think, gosh. And just watching like maybe some of our films that we get to scout, I'm like, what is going on with these lights?
Yeah.
I think that's the big difference. The LED lights are a ton brighter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird light, isn't it? From an official standpoint, I was always amazed in the middle of the field. You can't see the crowd for whatever reason. They're just dark. You can only basically see up to the sidelines, but you have this fantastic lighting, basically on the playing surface. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, no doubt. And the other thing that's really cool about that is the pictures, from the sidelines, like so like our homecoming, we packed, we probably had 4,000 people plus at our game. And Coach Rebus runs the sticks for us on the sidelines, and he's taking pictures of the crowd, and it's just packed, and it looks real. I mean, it almost looks like a professional job taking the pictures because the lighting looks so cool.
That's awesome. Going back to your playing days, and you're playing at Neenah High School, and you eventually end up going to Lawrence. Was that Lawrence a place that you were like, yeah, this could be a place I want to go to, or was it something that kind of fell into your lap, and you're like, this feels like home to me?
Yeah, well, I was looking at all the Midwest Conference schools. I was looking at Carroll, Ripon, La Crosse, Lawrence, and I didn't really know. Like my parents weren't really big sports fans or anything like that, so I was kind of green. I just told Coach Parker, "Hey, I really want to play," and he's like, "Oh, I know Coach at Lawrence and Ripon," and he said, "So that's really where I went."
Okay,
and I originally was planning on going to Carroll, and so I made a late change like in May, and because Bob Werdinger from Kaukauna was just relentless at calling me, and then so I decided, you know what, I think I will. I decided I'll go chemistry. I'll do paper chemistry. I'll play football. I'll run track, and I'll be close to home. My parents will love it, and so I switched it at the end. And on a side note, I thought, okay, I'll just call Coach Mason Holder. I'll just call the school. I called my counselor up, and I thought, oh, this would be an easy job. And this is a 18-year-old kid thinking, of course. And so I called my counselor, and I tell him, hey, I'm going to go to Lawrence. I'm not coming, and just I'm just making you aware so that you can take me off your list. And she's like, whoa, you're one of Coach Mason Holder's big finds. He's going to be upset. You have to call him." And I was like, I'm like, "Oh shoot, I wasn't planning on that." And so I was, the 18-year-old kid, I'm taking the easy way out. And so then she's like, "Nope, here's his home number. You're going to have to call him."
Jeez.
Oh gosh, did he light me up? And he goes, "And it's that Bob," and he knew the story. "It's that Bob Wardinger. I know it."
So
you.
Bob was representing Lawrence. He was trying to get you to play at Lawrence.
He just, for some reason, Bob, during his time, got really connected with Lawrence. He helped coach a couple of years while I was there, but always helped recruit.
Yeah.
And he still does it to this day. As a matter of fact, I was at the Neenah basketball game last night because my son Luke is a player on that team, and Bob was there. And so I sat down and talked, and we talked a lot about Lawrence and how, he feels they're really starting to get going there, and recruiting is starting to turn around. He's looking forward. They played a really young team this year,
Right.
and he's hoping that they're going to turn it around. And so am I. I mean, I had a lot of fun at Lawrence. It was, I met my wife there. I had great fun athletically there, and it was great for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tosh and I have been lucky enough to talk to actually quite a few connections, Joe Vandenacker and the new lacrosse coach, and people like that. And I feel like they've made a new investment. They've updated the track and the Bonta Bowl and the baseball fields. They're really making a new investment and kind of a commitment into athletics. And I feel like they've kind of brought in some different coaches that are, like you talked about, you have to be able to recruit. And I feel like these guys and gals they're coming in there are maybe it's a spark and kind of boost at athletics at Lawrence, because it's fun. I mean, the Bonta Bowl is one of the best stadiums out there.
Oh, no question about it. When I went there, the Bonta Bowl was beautiful, and especially during the fall, and so the upgrades to the school is really nice. I mean, how can you beat that location either?
Right.
I mean, it's just right next to downtown Appleton. Appleton is just a great area to do tons of things. I mean, it is a great location. I mean, I'm hoping that, I think, if you look back at what Coach Agnes and how they recruited and just how they got all those guys from the FEA,
Right.
or just the Fox, not just the FEA, the small schools, little shoots, and brilliant. And then how they just really got after, Chicago.
Yeah.
And gosh, we just had, like, when I was there, we just said our dudes were really good, and and they were getting really good kids, and at all in all positions, and then it just slowed down.
Yeah.
And so my memories of Lawrence have been really fond, and I still talk to many of my teammates that I played with.
What's it like being a student? I mean, you go from Neenah, and then I'm assuming you lived in the dorms and things like that. I mean, what's life like as a student at Lawrence in downtown Appleton?
Well, the downtown Appleton was fun. Being a student at Lawrence was not easy. It was a super hard school. You spent a lot of time getting your work done. It was on tri-semesters. You only had 3 classes, but wow, did they work you? I should have been worried when my first assignment came in June, and it was the book that I had to read before I got there.
Were you a good student? Did you like to study, or was that tough to learn?
Well, yeah. In high school, I was almost a 4.0 student, but I didn't have to study. And so it took a little bit of, I ended up with like a 3.3, but I had my first semester there, my first 2 semesters there, I was like a 2.6. I was like, okay. So then my sophomore year, I'm like, okay, I know I can do this. So I just buckled down, and then I made Dean's List the last 3 years I was there. But I didn't take it as serious as I should have my first 3 semesters, because tri-semesters.
Yeah.
So I had to. My parents were pretty vocal about that as well, and
encouragement.
Encouragement.
Was that freshman studies that you had the book for?
Yeah, that was freshman studies.
That's a grind. I remember trying to get some of the baseball players when I was coaching through that class. Holy crap. That tried me, and I already been to college.
I know. I mean, you're reading books like Thomas Kuhn and Paradigm Shift.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took me 4 years to figure out what the word paradigm shift actually meant.
You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or any podcast app. Follow our social accounts for show updates, local events, inspirational content, or simply for fun. Follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, or Instagram. Please contact the Newsa-Cast to share your story, offer a suggestion of a particular athlete or sport, or even an idea, or just simply say hello. Newsa-Cast@gmail.com.
You talked a little bit about your recruiting, and now that you're a head coach at a high school, the recruiting has changed so much. How do you deal with that recruiting aspect and being a head coach at the same time and teaching and everything else that you do? Because being an administrator now at Oshkosh, I see these coaches come in to recruit these kids, and it's just like, I mean, it's a lot different than it was back in the late 80s.
Well, I mean, it's a ton different because, well, I mean, there's busy times like December and then just recently we just had enough. So there's 2 times a year it's really busy, and you may have 5, 6, 7 coaches coming in during that week, and so I need to set up with Tina in the main office, make sure I have a room, make sure she has the times down, she greets them, I meet, and then I organize, I message the kids. And so that we make all those meetings happen. And then I'm doing it on the times that I'm not teaching. And so it's a lot of work. It steals a lot of your time during those days. And, but I mean, I on the other side of it, recruiting's important. You want to find that match. You want to find that school that's right for you. And it's an interesting process. And then it's also, you got to be honest with your kids. You got kids that think, oh, I want to go D1. And I'm like, all right, well, you're not going to go D1. And so, and then I've got some kids that I said, I think D3 would be perfect, but then they want to be scholarship players. And then, and then you got kids that have no idea. So we spend a lot of time talking about it. And then and that goes into our culture of a football team where we, if you really want to do that, you got to get used to these long days where you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. You're going to be busy from 6 to 7, 8 o'clock at night every day of the week. Yeah. And that's what you want. And that's what you got to decide if you like that. Now, if you go D3, it's not like that. But if you want to go scholarship, that's a whole nother story. So I mean, we do a lot of time prepping and their mind for it. And I feel as a program at Neenah, we do a good job of prepping our kids for college if they want to play.
Do most kids get recruited like through film? Is that how they're being discovered, or like how does a kid get recruited for the D3 and D1? Because you've had some D1 players come through your program, I believe, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's a multitude of ways. So D3, every D3 college, probably in the Midwest, will shoot me an email at some point. And then I just keep my list of the kids that I've talked to that are interested in playing, with their grade point, with their ACT score, their Twitter handle, all the information they need. And then I just send it out. And then what I think they can play, what level I think they can play. And I said, here's my list. And then I give that to them. But now other, with like scholarship coaches, scholarship players, like Rob Som will say, oh, when they come up here, Rob Som, oh, check those kids out at Neenah. So maybe Northwestern's visiting them first, and he'll say, oh, you got to check those. Neenah's got a couple kids you got to check out. Okay. And so a lot of word of mouth by coaches, a lot of, if you've got a kid that's, just like Grant Dean, that's just ripping it up. And I mean, he just gets noticed. And like we got a young kid, Ashton Van Beek, who started for us at quarterback at freshman. He's great wide receiver last year because he took over for an injured quarterback, and that injured quarterback came back. So Evan came back, and then D1 schools are on him already because they're like,
Right.
They just know. And so then they're always in contact with me as well. They'll call me up, or those guys usually text me and say, "Hey, who's you got anybody this year?" And then I'm like, "Yep, you got to check these guys out."
It always amazed me, at least from my perspective, of a D1 athlete. Refed a couple, Braylon, but they're just. There's just a certain look to the D1 athletes that's just completely different. They walk, move, just the way they handle themselves is just different than everybody else on the field. It's just amazing to me. And I'm not sure what that is other than they're just that good at it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is either, but you know what? They stick out like sore thumbs. And they do develop a swagger. I mean, when you walk into a game, even during warm-ups, you walk in warm-ups, it's like, holy jeepers, look at that.
Yeah.
And so I agree 100%. There's just something about the kids that get that swagger and just have a way of moving. And Grant Dean, we've worked with him for obviously probably 10 years as a third grader. We were well aware of Grant Dean and just how he scoots so effortlessly. That's
kind of indescribable, isn't it? That's just a gene or just pure luck or what. I don't even know what you attribute it to, but it's just, I don't even know how that happens, but there's just few and far between that happens too.
Yeah. And I would agree. And like as a young, as a fifth grader, he was running circles around kids.
Yeah.
And he just, and the thing that stands out about him is as he continued as a ninth grader, we brought him up to JV, and since I've been in Neenah for the last 12 years, we brought 3 kids up. That's it.
Okay.
And to 3 kids that are in ninth graders to varsity. And we brought him up to JV, he played 1 game there. I'm like, and he returned, I think he returned 2 punts. I'm like, I think that he can probably come up. And then we brought him up. And then by the end of the year, I mean, it was crazy. By the end of the year, he's starting offensively. He's a safety for us, and he's doing our kickoffs, and he was our punt returner.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's incredible. Those kind of kids are fun to watch.
Going back a little bit back to Lawrence as well. You had a hell of a career. Did you envision? I mean, I kind of want to go into that. You were a 2-sport athlete coming out, and how does that 2-sport athlete transition to what we have now? We have a lot of students, a lot of players who are just kind of specializing. Do you encourage your players at Neenah to do a lot of other sports besides just football?
I'm 100% old school on this. And as a matter of fact, we make all our kids play a second sport, whether they like it or not. And that's the message home. That's the message to our middle school kids. Because, at the end of the day, we love to have as many football players as we can get our hands on, because you need numbers. And but at the end of the day, you really want those kids to compete. So we want them to be really good competitors.
Okay.
And so we want to see our kids compete in lacrosse. We want to see them compete in baseball, track, basketball, wrestling. That's what we want to see. And so, we really want all our kids out for track.
Yeah.
And so, and we have probably a dozen kids out for lacrosse, maybe more.
Yeah.
And so, but we encourage that. And the only thing that gets a little hard is we want those guys that are in season to continue lifting. And so then we organize, and some of them have to come in before school to get that 2 days a week in lifting. And so, but because that's the thing. So we obviously as a football program lift year round, and that's what we do. But we encourage strongly the multiple sport athlete, and that's what we want.
That's interesting you say that, because I think Rob even said that seems to be the number one concern, especially when you take the sport of lacrosse that's still trying to establish itself. It's just become a WIAA sport. But I'm a huge advocate for kids to play lacrosse. I think that the crossover, the footwork, just the movement and the competition in lacrosse, there's a great correlation to football and to a lot of sports. I'm huge on kids. My own kid, went through high school lacrosse and played high school football. But it's interesting that you talk about the weight room, because that's kind of what Rob got at too. You have to make sure that the two clubs or programs are kind of interconnected through the weight room. I mean, that seems to be the main key to really make the football coaches okay with a kid going to play lacrosse. And I think that's the one relationship I kind of see that really needs to get solidified, I think, to really advance lacrosse. And in the end, it'll be a good benefit for football.
Yeah, and I think that, a number of our football players were really important in that second place finish in the state last year for Neenah lacrosse, and having big defensemen, and so I think there's an easy role for that, and I think in the future you're going to see more really good lacrosse players that are really good football players, and you're going to see more of that happening. I think as that sport grows, and like Cooper Seek is going to be one of our better running backs coming up this year. He plays lacrosse and he scoots, and he's going to be. If his handles in lacrosse are good, he's really gonna have a nice season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same movement. If he's an attacking the goal, if his stick skills are fine, but his footwork's all running back fits, the cutting and the dodging and the twists and turns. And do you remember Isaiah Gash played for Bayport? I don't know.
He went to Michigan.
Well, he kind of went all over, but out of the New York area, and he's playing professional lacrosse. I mean, he's getting paid to play lacrosse. He played in the indoor league. In fact, he actually made, like a TikTok or whatever highlight. He got in a fight and he won the fight. There's no question about it. And but that guy was a beast, but he's a professional lacrosse player. And I think he's got a legit chance to play in the PLL, which is the new professional league as well.
Wow. Did not know that, but it would make sense. I mean, those are, those sports, kind of like rugby, that football players are naturally good at because the violence of it, and the same thing with lacrosse. I mean, it's a violent sport. It's a lot of contact. I mean, that's part of why I like the sport itself is the violence. It's just that physical contact is just fun, and just like-minded people playing the game.
Yeah, no doubt. It's very violent to the field as well, as we talked about Rocket Stadium.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
When we had Eric Marsh on, he talked about how you were 100% in and let's get these guys playing both sports. And he was very appreciative that you were one of the people who were on board right away.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And the worst thing to do for our kids, just in general, as a coach, is put them in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing we want to do is, so I'm constantly checking with coaches. I'm constantly checking with, okay, where are you at? Is football your number one? Where's lacrosse your number one? Is basketball your number one? What's your number one? So, because we have expectations. So if your football is your number one, then we want you to follow this plan. If football is your number two behind basketball, lacrosse, or whatever, or wrestling, then we follow this plan. Because we realize you're going to do that. We want you to play, but we have two separate paths because we want them to be able to communicate with us and meet our demands as well as meet their other sport demands. And so I feel like that's super important in meeting kids in the middle. So we don't put them, well, Coach Kluskins wants me here and Coach Rubis wants me here and Coach Young wants me here. And that's hard on kids. So I'm a big advocate of communication and figuring out, the path that these kids want to take.
That's really cool to hear because I think that plays into what success you've had at Neenah. The consistency is that you have a consistent program, and part of that is because of what you just said, that you're meeting these kids where they need to be, so you can still have these numbers and these guys participating in your sport.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's like numbers are super important, but it's also important. Like kids, they're young kids. I mean. and they get nervous talking to coaches, and when they get silent, I'm always like, okay, they don't want to play football anymore, or they don't want to meet the plan that they've talked about. So we have this thing called start time in high school, and then I was like, all right, I got to talk to another kid. So I just pull them in. I'm like, all right, where are we at? Okay, and some kids, coach, I'm going to be done with football. And then we'll talk about it, and some come back and some don't, and some say, I want to do this. I'm like, we can work it out, we can figure it out. And so, I mean, communication is important, and then just knowing where those kids are at mind wise, and then just the head coaches need to talk to.
You seem to have a knack for really turning programs around. I mean, your first. Basically your first full-time, gig as a coach, as a head coach, is Wausau East, right? And you take a pretty, a terrible program really over, I looked at the stats, over 3 years, they were 2-25. And in 2 years, you turned that program around in 9-11 and back-to-back playoff appearances. I mean, that's great work.
Yeah. I think it was, I went up there and, just being passionate and being a people person, and then a guy that enjoys working with kids. And, when we went up there, I didn't bring anybody on my staff, so it was just me going up there. But unfortunately, I was connected. I called up Ripon College, and I had Coach Coles come up, and he installed our offense. And then I had and Coach Hankins from Xavier. I had him bring his staff up, and he installed the defense. And so they could not only coach the players, they coached my coaches that I had up there. And so I spent 2 days defensively in our contact days doing that. And then 2 days with Coach Hensler and Coach Coles doing on the offense side of things. And so we went into the season, we had a plan. I met with every kid and parent / kids meetings, because I was like, okay. And we just focused on, I said, the biggest deal we want to focus on is just being competitive and continually improving through the season. I didn't talk about the wins or losses, because that was just, I'd known they were rough. They had won 2 games in 3 years. And when those coaches came, he said, hey, coach, you got some athletes. And so I'm like, all right. And I think those coaches instilled some hope into those kids. And I think that hope hope to me is just positive intentions pass forward in a season or in your life, and then you catch them when you get there. And so we were, blessed to have a pretty good 2 years down there, or up there.
So Coach Hankins, you mentioned him, and in that same article, you mentioned him as one of your, big influencers or mentors, or, you learned a lot with him. But I mean, he evolutionized, at least in this area, the use of film, through Huddle and just expanding the sport of football. I mean, I'm sure your job got easier by just the ease of Huddle. And I can speak as an official. We watched it a ton. I mean, that's been amazing to watch that over, I don't know what it's been now, 10 years or less.
Yeah, no question. And actually, since Hinks and I are really good friends, I've been the recipient of always at the latest of Huddle, and always kind of a little bit ahead of the game, because he always gives me their latest ideas and latest software for that. So I'm always a year ahead, I think, of people. So we're always learning our stuff a little bit faster. So that's been a bonus. And then just him being able to, come over to talk to our staff, so I brought him up there. He showed our staff in Wausau how to use Huddle to really maximize his potential. And then the same thing, I brought him over to Neenah. And for the first couple of years I was at Neenah, he always met with my staff to continue working on how to maximize the use of Huddle. And so I feel like we do a really, really good job of breaking down teams. And I think that's really helped us, game planning wise. And so that's been another super key component to our success at Neenah and at Wausau East.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And like you mentioned earlier, the lighting's getting better, the cameras are getting better, the the ability to follow the ball. I mean, it used to be some of these high school tapes, they didn't always follow the play, and it was just, it was miserable.
You went to the game to scout with your pieces of paper,
Yeah.
and you're writing down you had your left hand guy and your right hand guy. Hey, was that power? Was that power? Or was that blast?
Yeah. Yeah. Although weirdly, I feel like, because that's how I learned too. Like right after high school, I mean, I'm only 5'7". I never played football. I had maybe in middle school, but I love the sport. I was always like the manager just to be around it. But Engen was the head coach then. And right after high school, I stayed in the area, and I remember going to scout for him. And you really learn football that way because you're forced to focus on the line play, really.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's really, I mean, I feel like when I first started coaching football, I started at Waukesha North High School where I first started teaching. And it wasn't until I coached the offensive line that I really figured out, like, that I really felt like, gosh, now I understand football. Because we'd always play, when we played against a wing T team in high school, I could never figure that out. And then I was in charge of the scout, because I was coaching offensive line, I did the scout plays, and I'm like, I now understand wing T football. I now know how to defend it. And and so I think, I never played offensive line, but I feel like that's really my favorite position to coach. And because those dudes in there, first of all, they're dialed in. They don't get any love, and they got to be super violent. They're going freaking max effort, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Yeah. Every muscle in their body is going. And they're just giving it all. And if we own that line of scrimmage, we're going to have success that night. And so I just love working with those kids. They're usually pretty funny, and they're violent. They're super good dudes. And so it's the heart and soul of our football team.
And you're triggering memories. I worked the umpire position, like I said earlier, with John Doden's crew. And that was my favorite thing about being an umpire, was because that's the umpire's responsibility, is all those guys in basically the middle of the field, the line play for the most part. And you're right. Those guys are funny, and they're just, I love it. Line play is where it's at in football. Yeah.
And so, that just helped me be able to run a lot of different, when we were at Wausau East, I'd be perfect. We run veer when we get up there, and nobody else ran it in the league. We were really small. It's a lot of double teaming. You don't have to block a couple of guys, and we were able to get that rolling, and it was super important. But the ability to be able to do it successfully against many different fronts was something that I had learned back in the 90s, and that really helped me out a lot.
Northeast Wisconsin Sports Advancement, or Newsa, is a nonprofit org where our mission is to raise money, provide support, and bring greater awareness to youth sports organizations in Northeast Wisconsin. We do this primarily through the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet and the Newsa-Cast. Each year, we give back to the community through the Every Kid Plays grant. If you are considering donating or providing support through Newsa, please visit redsmith.org for details. When you watch like a Packer game, I don't know if you have time to watch one, but are you watching it like a coach? Are you like watching the line play? Are you able to just kind of sit back and just enjoy and watch the ball? Or how do you watch like a pro game?
No, I watch it from the line standpoint. I did, because I'm still run pass guy. I'm looking at their, but so I watch it like that. But the other thing, that those RPOs, you're like, oh, that's a run. Oh no, no, that's a pass, and that really gets after you. But for me, I'm always watching the line play, and then I usually, if I'm watching I usually watch it from the offensive standpoint. If okay, they're pulling and stuff like that.
Right.
But like when I sit and watch it with my son Sam, who played at North Dakota State, he watched it from the defensive standpoint all the time. He's like, "Oh, geez, you see what the flat bear just did?" I'm like, and we'll run the play back. I'm like, I don't know what he was thinking there, and but it's crazy because he played 4 years or 5 years at North Dakota State, and that's just how he watched football games. He just watches the defense and never watches the offense.
Yeah, that makes sense, though. I mean, think of the thousands of hours he's watched himself or his position play. Did you, when he was playing? I mean, you would coach on Friday nights. Were you ever able to catch his games, or how did that work for you?
Oh, well, my wife and I really like each other, and we spent a lot of car time. So I try to coerce myself to get in bed by midnight. Win or lose, it's still hard to fall asleep. And if we went to all his home games, so we'd get up at 3, and I usually had been in bed for like 3 hours, and we'd leave at 3:30. My wife would drive to Hudson, so about 3.5 hours. I would grind film the whole time. And
wow.
And at 7:00, I'd take over and I'd drive, and she'd sleep from Hudson to somewhere past, I don't know, not Albert Lee, but some place that we maybe Fergus Falls or something like that. And I would just talk on the phone and then try to listen to podcasts or whatever, just to, stay awake. And then we get there and go, and then we enjoy it. We get to the tailgate. We found that right away. We used to get there maybe half hour before the game started. And then we'd sit in our seats, but we just sat in the car for 7.5 hours. Then we'd sit in our seat for 3.5 hours. Then we go for dinner for 2 hours. And then we'd wake up on Sunday. We'd get in the car and leave. And we felt awful for the rest of the week. So then we realized that we had to just get up earlier, get to the game 3 hours for it, walk to the bookstore, go to the tailgate, then go to the game, and then go out to dinner, then get up early, get a walk in or an exercise in. And then we'd go for breakfast with Sam, get back in the car leave there by 8:00. And I could drop Wendy off at home at 3:30 and go right to school at 4, because our meetings start then.
Yep.
And,
right.
And so on the, so we shared the drive on the way home as well. And like I said, and so that's what we did. That's how we handle it. So if we were going to see Matt play at Bethel, obviously it was pretty nice because it was only 4 hours and 15 minutes away.
Sure.
It was usually we came back that night. And so I had all Sunday morning to actually get work done. And when Joe at St. Norbert was only a 35-minute drive, which was
right,
really nice.
How is it from a dad perspective? I mean, how do you watch your kids play during the game? Are you chill? How do you watch your kids play?
Well, while they're in, I watch the game since they're all defensive guys, I watch the game from the offensive line perspective, and then I go right to them.
Yeah.
So I just watch it how a coach would be watching it as their skill coach. And that's just so that's how I watch it. So then I pretty much know all the mistakes he made at the end of the game. And I know all the good I'm like, we talk about all like, gosh, was your footwork good on that play, Matt or Sam or Joe? And so that's how I watch it. So, again, it's super enjoyable.
I'm really curious from your standpoint, just because sports are filled with failure. I mean, how do you handle that with to see your kids fail, on a play? I know that get up and play the next one, or just maybe failure in their football or whatever. I guess, how do you handle that? I mean, it's agonizing.
There's definitely times that, with failure, there's two types of failure, right? There's the failure that you're learning from, and the failure of losing a game that you really wanted to win. And there's some times where I get upset with my boys, and I'd be in dad mode rather than coach mode. But because you want to be in coach mode because the failure is important because you learn all those lessons and you get better from your failures. And so in that respect, it's just it's always the next play philosophy, and what do we learn from that, and just keep and get better. But I think that, failure of like losing a big game and things like that, I think if you ask, our 4 boys, they feel like they were blessed. They had really good football experiences in high school and in college. And I think if you ask like Joe, he would have said, Dad, you got a lot better as developing your players, a lot better at coaching your kids the older they got. So like Luke and Matt were prepared much better than Sam or Sam and Joe were prepared. because the better that we got, the better that my staff has gotten at Neenah. We coach kids better. And I think we handle difficult situations better. And so I think, Joe and I were just talking about that this weekend. And so sometimes he's like, gosh, I wish I was a little older. I would have done things a little bit differently. But he also said, looking at how hard Sam worked at North Dakota State, he's like, I don't know if I could have done that schedule. The 12, 15 more days. He's like, I love football, don't get me wrong. And I love my time at St. Norbert, but I don't know if I could have done that. And so it's just good perspective. Each of our kids was different, but it's the same in many ways.
You spent 2 years at Wausau and Neenah opens up. Was it kind of in the back of your mind that you wanted to get back to Neenah where everything started and get back to that home?
Oh gosh. I really liked Wausau, because, we had those 2 years where our successful in making the playoffs. And then also we were 0-3 my first year there. And then Abilene North rolled in town 3-0, fourth ranked team in the state. We were down 21-0 at half, and we beat them 22-21. Yeah. We blocked 2 punts in the second half. The final stats come out. They have like 350 yards offense. We had 105 yards offense, and we win 22-21. But we had some things like that happen, and that turned our the mindset of our kids around there. And I really liked the kids. I liked my staff there. The school was beautiful. Moving 4 boys up to Wausau with my wife and 2 dogs was just a bear. I did not want to move again. So, to be honest, I didn't put my name in the hat, and weekend closed. And Jim Strict, who was then the athletic director, called me up and said, hey, we're really disappointed that you didn't put your name in the hat for this job. Me and many of the people that are here that worked with you when you were in high school, and many of the area people that I've talked to want you to come back and take this job and bring back Neenah football. And I said, yeah. So they coerced me, and I went down and talked to them, and then kind of a funny story. So then I did come down to interview. The night before, Jim Strick calls me up and says, hey, Steve, we actually need you to apply for the position. Come down here and interview. And so I said, okay, I'll go on weekend and do that. So I tried to go on weekend. Well, it was already closed. I said, well, Jim, I just tried to do that. I can't do that. And he's like, and so we reopened it. And so then we interviewed. And of course, I was offered the job. And then I still couldn't make my mind up. And I was stressed out about this because I really developed some great relationships up in Wausau. And I'm kind of sometimes too much of a people pleaser. And I got shingles during this process of this. I was trying to make my decision. I remember getting up that morning. I said, okay, we're staying, Wendy. And she said, okay. I told Joe, we're staying. And his eyes, the look he gave me, and his eyes welled up like he was going to start crying. And I'm like, I'm missing something here. So I went to school, taught, and I came home for lunch. And I just remember this vividly because when our dog was really sick, and I was coming home for lunch to make sure he's okay. And I called up John Milkey at East. I'm like, John, I said, I can't make up my mind whether I should stay at Wausau. I've loved it here. It's been great. Or I need to come back home to Neenah, my hometown. And I'm calling you to ask you what you do, because I know you did the same thing. You're at Anago, and then you went back to Appleton. And it gets in that gruff voice. I talk, well, Steve, yeah, if I were you, I wouldn't come back there. I'd stay there as long as possible because I don't want to play basketball against your 4 boys. And then he says, Steve, I'm just kidding. It's a no-brainer. You got to come back. He said, if you don't do it, it'll be one of your biggest regrets of your life. And I know from experience. He said, the Anago program was rolling when I was there, and I loved it up there. But coming back to Appleton was the best thing I did in my life. And he said, and that position will never open up again, probably, and you'll never be able to get it, and you're going to wish you had. So I came back from lunch and walked into the principal's office and told him I was going to Neenah right then. And so that was the story.
Wow.
So it took me, it took me, probably a month to convince myself to do it. And then it took John Milkey to put the final seal of approval on it.
Jeez.
It's really cool. It's amazing. You never know where a conversational lead, because then you do the exact same thing you did at Wausau. You take a program that's not very good and you turn them into winners.
Yeah. And so that was the other thing. Cause I said, that's the other thing. My wife's like, well, why don't you want to go back to Neenah? I said, well, gosh, I feel like I'm 2 years ahead of the ball right now. I got it rolling in Wausau. And I said, I'm going to be starting to do the same thing when I get back down there. And so what did I do when I went down there? I called up Cerrone. Cerrone put our defense in.
Yeah.
And then Hinks, we ran a similar offense to Hinks at that time. So he put our offense in. And so then we got that. So again, other coaches coaching coaches and that's where we started.
How important does the youth programs play? I mean, are you connecting with them, or is that not really a thing back in those days? Kind of a feeder program, or I guess how are you finding the high school athletes to fill out your roster?
Well, that's been, I've gotten in Wausau, I was okay at it. In Neenah, I was okay for the start, but over the last probably 4 or 5 years, Ryan St. Clair came along, and I'd done a pretty decent job, but now I've got a guy down there that just runs the show, and we've had about 70 kids, almost 70 kids per class, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. He organizes the coaches. We have another guy that's the coach for quality control, make sure everybody knows what we're doing. We meet with those kids. The last year we had 60 freshmen out for football. This year we're going to have 60 freshmen again. Wow. And so super important trying to just get them running the basis of our offense and our defense, and just get them to love playing football. And then again, love to compete, And so I see that, I think the best demonstration of that is just watching my son Luke play basketball. He loves competing. I wouldn't say he's over. I wouldn't say he enjoys basketball, but he doesn't enjoy basketball like he enjoys football. He loves football, and he goes out there and just competes. And he's probably doesn't probably have the best skill set at basketball as anyone else on the team, but he is by far the best competitor out there. And I think that's, the important thing with what we're trying to develop with our youth is like, hey, we want them to love football, and we want our coaches to teach, failure is important, but we want those kids to love football. We want you to love those kids up, put discipline into them, and show them how teamwork and being a competitor makes great athletes and great human beings. Mm-hmm. And so we've just tried to take our philosophies, our culture at the high school, implement it into our youth program. And we do that because we have a lot of good guys down there that that's all they do. They don't coach on any of the teams down there. And then we have probably 40 coaches for those 6 teams, 2 at each level. And so we spend a lot of time. And then this summer we have camps. We have a week-long camp, and then we have our academies for quarterbacks, receivers, and linemen. And those run throughout the summer. So I do spend a lot of time in front of those little kids.
I mean, that's huge. That's great to hear. And I know other schools have some variations of that. And I feel like that's really grown over the last half a dozen years. That connection to the high schools, that's great to hear. And I'm sure that pays dividends. I mean, you must see these kids go from 6th grade through graduation, and that's got to be the ultimate.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is, as 8th graders come in to be 9th graders, I already know them all. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so a lot of my coaches are like, well, who's that? And then, we go through but my coordinators know them all too, because they're at those camps too, but not all of our staff knows them all. But I feel like, like Grant Dean, all those kids, I've known them since they've been in 2nd grade. And a lot of our good kids, I've known them for 10 years and coached for that long. And you really develop. And I think that's what makes it fun about coaching. The moments you have in practice, the little bit of downtime you have, and where you're just laughing, giggling with those guys between a play or something like that, and the next player yelling at them because they screwed up, and but just that camaraderie that you build with those kids. I mean, people can ask me a lot of questions about my players. I can answer. I can tell you exactly who he is because I've spent 10 years with him. Yeah,
just hang in with the guys.
Yeah. And so, and that's the part that's pretty fun. I mean, that's the part that I really enjoy about coaching. Because I mean, the days, even in the off season, it's a rat race. I mean, I get to school at 5:15, 5:30, and I come home at 5:15. All right, so I put 12 hours a day, just minimum.
Yeah.
And that doesn't count with what we do during the football season. And so it has to be enjoyable. I mean, that relationship piece is the part that that I really enjoy. And turning those kids and watching those kids grow up is fun.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear from coaches. I mean, we've talked to some, and that similar mindset that you have, that makes a successful program because of, I mean, you're always going to be a teacher. And coaching is just an extension of teaching, and you build those relationships, and that's amazing to hear what you're doing. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, how's the program looking? Good. I mean, you're feeling good going into new stadium. You guys had a good run in the playoffs this past year, and feeling good about the future. And Neenah, I mean, the FBA is just, even in your day in the 80s, the FBA has always been a tough place to play, a tough comp, best in the state, really.
Yeah, and so I mean, and I think that's helped. I think that's helped. My mindset, our coach's mindset, just to you want to be the best, and then you got to start learning from the Kimberleys, the Fond du Lacs, the Appleton Norths. What do they do that sets them apart? I think that Kaukauna has done a great job of growing as well, and so we spent a lot of time on that, and so that is so the off season is okay. What's our personnel? What part of our offense do we need to tweak? What part of our defense? Who's the kid that can play the position that Luke Young is leaving, who's played it for 3 years? Who's replacing Grant Dean? Who's replacing Evan? All right. Who's our offensive line going to be? And I think that looking at what we've got coming in is we're going to be fine. We're going to be good. We've got kids coming in. Our strength numbers are the best that they've been since I've been here. Granted, we're graduating, some top end kids that it's hard to lose a Badger. It's hard to. And Luke's going to play at Duluth. Evan was an amazing quarterback for us for 3 years.
Yeah,
but we're going to be good. We're going to be just fine. The kids we got coming in to replace those kids, they may not be as good, but I think that as a collective whole, we're bringing in some kids that are better at other positions.
Good. Does your offense and defenses kind of schemes or play calls kind of ebb and flow through classes of students? Like, I mean, some of these kids are moving on to play football at the highest level. So I feel like you can maybe offensively call some plays that you maybe normally wouldn't happen, or maybe they're just put in positions that are just normal play calls. Is there any, I guess, how does that work for you? Is it just always evolving?
I think it's always evolving. But when you got a kid like on the caliber of a Grant Dean, you can get away with calling a couple plays that, I mean, we spent a little time trying to put, formation wise, where we feel like, we can get Grant Dean on an outside linebacker in this formation.
Sure.
And so we're looking at, we'll do things like that. And so I think that we did a fair amount of that this year, and then there's certain teams that scheme you a little bit differently, and they always scheme you the same way. And so sometimes we like, all right, we got to use the plays that we only use once a year because we do it against this scheme. And then I think, we play, and there'd be years that our quarterback wasn't as a good runner. And so we're going to scheme up more run plays. But if our quarterback's a runner, gosh, we're gonna have them run the ball. So we're gonna scheme up that, and or if our quarterback throws the fade well, the shots, and we felt like Evan was a good runner and he threw shots well. I mean, and that's what we, so we put that stuff in our offense. So that's what we need to. That's what we figure out who we are. But we do spend a lot of time running the ball, so we got to figure out what part of the passing game that we're gonna be good at.
Right.
Because there's only a certain amount of time in the day, and we want to be good at what we're doing. And I think that's one thing I learned from Jorgie when we had him for 2 short years. Is gosh, I mean, nothing he did was earth shattering. All right. But the amount of time he broke down, like nuances of the defense and then said, okay, we got to run these plays and we got to be proficient at them. And we sometimes run that single play like 12 times in practice, not in a practice, but during the week. And then like all our big plays that year, I bet we were at a 90% success rate. Because we had practiced it and practiced. Okay, here's our opportunity. It's there. Let's do it. Boom. We hit it. Like it was a play that we ran 5 times that game, but we only ran it once. I mean, so that was one thing that I learned from Jorgie, and just, keeping your scheme simple, but, practicing those plays that are important. And so those are things that, just the big thing, the ebb and flow of offense is, there's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah. That worked for Lombardi, didn't it? Pretty well. Just learn a few plays.
That's right.
Do them better than anybody.
Practice.
That's right. Yeah. When I knew you were coming on, I texted one of my officiating crewmates, and we were just talking about, because we always had fun working Neenah, Rocket Stadium, or even on the road. But I mean, it's always fun to work a Neenah game from an official standpoint. In the one play that stood out, and I don't even know if you remember this, but a hurdle in high school is pretty rare. It's only happened to me twice, and one was in a game of yours. It was at Rocket Stadium. I don't know who you were playing. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I want to say it was your quarterback. He was a really great athlete, and it was right in the middle of the field. He had a hurdle. I mean, it was a beautiful play, awesome play, just unfortunately illegal in high school. But that kind of play always sticks out. I can't remember the kid's name, but we both simultaneously remembered that exact play.
I remember that play too, and I'm trying to think back to who that was. And I'm sure it'll come to me, but it's not coming to me right now. But I'm sure it'll come to me when I'll text you, Tosh, and I'll like, oh, that's who it was.
Yeah. No, that was just a moment that popped in our head, and I thought it was pretty cool. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you, for sure. I mean, it's fascinating stories. I feel like we could do another hour.
Yeah, I'd be up for it.
Well, thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate it, and I'm glad we could finally get you on. And maybe we'll have to have you on right before the season. We can kind of do a preview to Neenah football.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
There you go.
Yeah, that would be cool. Definitely.
All right. Well, we got a plan in place.
And I love that you like lacrosse.
Giddy up.
Alrighty, guys, it is that time for us to throw it back to the Red Smith Banquet, where we take a look at, I don't even know how many guests have come to the banquet through the years. We've had 57 banquets times 3 major guests, so I don't know what the math is, but in all those times, there's only been once where the Red Smith Banquet Committee decided to bring back a featured speaker for the second time, and that person was named Art Holst, and most of you are going to say, who is Art Holst? And I'm pretty sure we said the same thing in 1987, but he was an NFL official, and he was an incredible speaker. So we throw it back to 1987. Paul Horning was the Red Smith Award winner, and a fellow by the name of Art Holst. Trust me, you're going to like this one. But he graced the crowd in 1987 at the Radisson Paper Valley Hotel, and so much so that he came back a few years later in 1992. But for this one, Tosh, we're going to go back to 1987 and take a listen to Art Holst.
The Red Smith Sports Award Banquet.
The main reason that this banquet was established was to honor at least 10 local area people who might not have been honored for the job they do to help in sports.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport.
Who's made a significant contribution to sports in the state of Wisconsin.
And also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
It's with great pleasure that I introduce this gentleman, a legend in his own mind, Art Holst. Okay, partner.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. That was a great introduction. That's the kind of introduction put Ed Garvey where he is today, and I want you to know I appreciate that. I've been introduced by a hell of a lot of people, but that's the first time I've ever been introduced by a billboard. That was a lot better than the introduction I had the other day in Indiana. I spoke for about 5,000 farmers over in Indiana. This farmer got up to introduce me. He looked at his notes. He says, "It says here our speaker needs no introduction." He said, "I hope that's true because I never heard of him before." Well, you're a good-looking audience. I was up in Alaska speaking to the Alaska Bankers Association. They were telling about a guy that was mushing out the Alaskan pipeline with his dog team. On the way out there, the lead dog died. Now, this is very bad for the lead dog. But it did represent a very pleasant change of scenery for the number 2 dog. And this is a very pleasant change of scenery for me tonight, and I didn't mean to compare it with the rear end of a dog, but I am delighted to be with you. Of course, every speaker that ever speaks for an audience says they're delighted to be with you. You never have a speaker in 22 years of running this Red Smith dinner. You've never had a speaker ever get up and say, "It's hell to be here. I'm sorry to be here." They're all happy to be here. But I flew in on Air Wisconsin, and when I tell you I'm happy to be with you, there's a ring of truth about that you don't ordinarily get from a speaker. Hell, I'm happy to be with anybody. I'm just happy to be on the ground. I got on that thing in Chicago. I didn't mind the radar, but the horn. And we taxied all the way. The interstate was busy. I was looking for the stewardesses and finally looked outside. There was one on each side of the airplane walking along with a picture of clouds. That's not what got me. What got me was the pilot. He came down the aisle. He had a compass on his arm with a mirror on it. I said, "What's that?" He said, it's a compass that shows you when you're lost." I said, "I know that, but what's a mirror for?" He said, "Well, stupid, you look in there, you can tell who's lost." Forrest Gregg just said, "I want one of those." Oh, dear. Well, about the only thing he didn't tell you was my age, and I bring that up because I was asking Jim Hanachik tonight. I made a couple of mistakes coming up here. I have to tell you that. I flew up, my wife and I flew up last night with Paul on the same flight, and I made the mistake of saying, "I'll flip you for dinner," and that's a mad thing. He said, "I have a deal with Pete. I don't do that. I haven't done that for 24 years, and tonight I said to Jim, pass the ketchup, and that's no good. I got a bottle of Miller beer instead, and it didn't do too well on the chicken. But I bring that up. I'm 64, Jim's 69, going to be 70. And I see some of you guys, now that I've passed 60, some of you out here have passed 60. Now that I've passed that milestone in my life, my whole life's upside down. Would you do that without the glasses? The National Football League has spies. They don't like pictures. Don't like pictures of the officials with the glasses on. But I am past 60, and since I passed 60, my whole life's upside down. I sit down to eat at night, I feel sexy. Go to bed, I feel hungry. I see some heads nodding around the room. I said to Bob, how do you get some of the older fellas out? He says, it's easy. We just tell them we're going to raffle off a prostate operation. I said, how'd you get the women out? He said, they came to see who'd win the prostate operation. Well, you've probably figured out by now that it's not going to be an intellectual presentation. And I got a baptism over here in Lambeau Field. You'll remember it, you guys. 1965, the next to last game of the season, playing Minnesota, 25-19 Green Bay. 25-19 Green Bay. Francis Tarkenton went back and threw a pass to Hall in the end zone, coming down the sideline, and Herb Adderley, that great defensive back for Green Bay, had him boxed in perfectly against the sideline, and at the 2-yard line, Hall reached out and shoved Adderley in the back and caught the ball in the end zone for what would have been the winning touchdown and would have given a championship to Baltimore, and I had the flag down on the 2-yard line. Herb turned around and said, he pushed me. I said, there's the flag. I went out to Norm Schachter. I said, I got offensive pass interference on the 2, no touchdown. 15 yards it was at that time, 15 yards from here. And I was excited. I was in my second year, 65. I ran up and that's the way I said it to him. I said, I got offensive pass interference on the 2, ball caught in the end zone, no touchdown. And incidentally, Bill Brown had come up to me, the fullback from Minnesota, and had screamed at me some invectives, pardon me, things like that. And I had eliminated him from the contest. I said, you're out of the ball game. Threw him out of the game. He said, you can't throw me out. I said, no, because you're already gone. And I said, number 30 Brown is out of the ball game. True story. Schachter looked at me and grinned, and he said, Art, take 2 steps backward and say it again. You're spitting in my face. And then 20 seconds later, 4th down for Minnesota. They threw a pass to Red Phillips on a post corner pattern, and he dove and caught the ball. The ball hit his arms and bounced up to his chest, and his first contact was with the pylon. And I was right there at the goal line, at the intersection of the goal line and the sideline. All I remembered yelling was, no! I didn't even remember signaling. But the local TV guy, they had it all over the country the next day, and he took me over, and sure enough, I signaled incomplete pass. They wrote those up in Sports Illustrated as the $1 million calls. But let me tell you about the humor. I kept the time at that time. The official time wasn't kept on the scoreboard clock. It was on the line judge's wrist. And the Packers got the ball back, and Starr was stalling the last 23 seconds or so out. I had the clock watch up like this with the gun, so I wasn't looking anywhere else. Schachter had gone to the other officials and said, when I cut the ball for the last play, let's leave the field. I'm standing out there like this. The clock came down to 0. I shot the gun. True story. Shot the gun, looked up. There wasn't another official on the field in Green Bay. And I had to go up through that tunnel with the Minnesota Vikings chewing me a new one. This is all true. I've never told this from the stage. I got into the dressing room, opened the door, and Schachter was standing there with a big grin, and he stuck his hand out, and he said, Art, don't worry about it. He said, someday, I know a guy that died with a cough like yours. Of course, he was in another guy's closet, but... Schachter stuck his hand out and he said, Art, don't worry about it. He said, someday we'll all look back on this and laugh and say, who was that guy that was with us for a couple of years that made those calls at Green Bay? But then he said the thing that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. He said, Art, just remember, 800 million Chinese don't even know we played. A football team got beat. The halfback on the losing team got on a train. Pretty soon the official that made the call that he swore beat him got on and sat down right beside him. The train took off. Nobody else was on the car. The train stopped at a small town. A grandmother and her gorgeous granddaughter got on and sat down right across the aisle. The kid is stealing glances at the pretty girl when all of a sudden the train shot into a dark tunnel. No lights in the tunnel, no lights in the train. In that pitch darkness was the sound of a kiss and then a loud slap, and the train shot out into the daylight. The grandmother was proud for 2 reasons. First, because she had a granddaughter pretty enough to get a kiss from a perfect stranger, and second, because the girl was nice enough to slap the guy. Now the granddaughter, on the other hand, was sure that this handsome kid had tried to kiss her in the dark, had missed, kissed her grandmother, and gotten slapped. The football official was certain that the halfback had leaned across the aisle in the dark and kissed a pretty girl, and she, being a nice girl, had swung, missed, and hit him, the official, right in the face. But the halfback was the only one on that car that really knew what happened. He had leaned over into the aisle, kissed the back of his hand, and just slapped hell out of the official.
Alrighty, folks, another great throwback. Remember, every Sunday, you can go to the Newsa-Cast YouTube page, and you can hear the full version of what you just heard here. And we have, like, gosh, I don't know, 70 or so throwbacks of all different folks, male, female, any sport, you name it, all came to the Red Smith Banquet. So go check that out. Well, Tosh, we've had another fantastic episode. Steve Jung was awesome, but we always like to play a little It's Forgotten and We're Never Forgetting before we sign off. So, Tosh, what's forgotten in your world?
Well, as we record this, we're kind of in the midst of one of those spring storms where we get a little bit of rain, a little bit of sleet, a little bit of snow, a little bit of everything. So I kind of want to forget snow. I'm ready for spring. I mean, spring has started officially. The equinox was on the 20th. So let's get rid of the snow. Let's get the grass greened up. Let's get some baseball, lacrosse, softball, soccer. Let's get these sports going, and let's have a good spring where they're not playing, 5 games in a row during the week.
Let's do that, Tosh. Let's do that tomorrow.
Sounds good. That's what we want. So I want to forget about this typical spring weather and get to some maybe abnormal spring weather. An actual good spring for the kids.
Yeah, we'll see. I feel like, we're in transition, right? I guess you can kind of handle it in March. It's just when it starts leaking into April and certainly into May, it needs to stop.
Absolutely. So that's what I want to forget. Joe, how about yourself?
Well, Tosh, I think it's, I didn't really know this and certainly has been forgotten, but back in the day, and we're talking back when the U.S. Mint Department started back in 1792, and pretty much for the next 100 years after that, did you know that we had half-cent pieces? Like we have the penny now. We used to have the half-cent piece, and it was discontinued in 1857, but we used to, I guess when the average wage in the 1790s, 1800s was about $65 a year. A half cent probably meant something, but
it probably did.
No doubt. Interestingly, that by the time it got to 1857, really the only people or folks that were really using the half cent the most was, you guessed it, the post office for postage. Yeah, exactly. So leave it to the post office. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. It was certainly forgotten. Actually, didn't even know it, but
did not know it as well.
Half cents,
awesome.
Half cents. Got a half a cent, Tosh. Got a half a cent. Well, Tosh, we got to find something good. So what's never forgetting in your world?
Well, I kind of mentioned it in the opening, but not going to forget this run by Oshkosh North boys basketball. Zay Mitchell was absolutely incredible to watch this year. He's super athletic. It'll be fun to see him continue to play at Iowa State. But all the young men on that team just were fantastic. They're all good kids. It was good to get to know them a little bit more this year, being my first year at North. So shout out to all those guys. It's going to be great to see some of them come back. And to the seniors, good luck with their future endeavors and whatever they do. But this was a great run. It was a lot of fun to be down at State with them and watch them run through the playoffs. So I am never forgetting Oshkosh North basketball 2024-2025.
Yeah, nor should you, man. Congrats to those guys. It was fun. It was fun following them through all the media. It was one hell of a run.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that was mine. Joe, what are you never forgetting?
Well, Tosh, a while back on the show, we talked a little bit about ice cream, and I like to do a little show prep at Copper Rock, and got a little bit of gelato. And God darn it, Tosh, I'm never forgetting gelato. I always forget about it too. You've got ice cream, fantastic. I love custard, like good Culver's custard. But dang it, you throw a good gelato in there, Tosh, and I can't decide which one I like more.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I'm a fan of custard. Like Leon's and Oshkosh is so good. So you get some pretty wild flavors with the gelato though, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, you really do. And the coffee shops, and probably most of them do, but certainly in downtown Appleton, almost all of them have a really good gelato, and they're all slightly different too, which, I don't know what makes them different. Creaminess, I guess, but you're right though. I think if I really had to decide, I think the custard, boy, there's just something about that. It's so good. What's the place in Milwaukee too? You've got Leon's, like you said, but there's Cops. Yes. Good call. Good pull, Tosh. Good pull. Well, I forgot about that, but I'm not forgetting about the sweet taste of ice cream, gelato, or custard. So I like them all. Well, Tosh, just like I like all Newsa-Cast, they're all good. Everybody should listen to all of them. They should like and subscribe to all of them as well. But Tosh, I like this one. Thanks to Coach Jung. And as always, it's always a hoot, Tosh.
Always a hoot.
Thanks for listening to the Newsa-Cast. We appreciate your support in our journey to highlight and support youth sports in Northeast Wisconsin. Help us grow by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts or sharing the Newsa-Cast on social media. A huge thank you to Diggstown for all the music in today's episode. Catch a gig, find them on Spotify, or check them out at diggstownrocks.com. One of the best ways to help us grow the show is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It really helps our visibility. This Newsa-Cast was produced by Polywave Studios.